On this week's GTA 6 o'clock, Rockstar's website update.
It's a false representation of reality.
The Take-Two investor call looms.
Were I moving my chips onto the table,
And here they go.
it would be on the...
And Dan Houser's interview dissected.
Oh, it's huge. This is... Where do I start with this? This is the mother load.
It's all here on this week's GTA 6 o'clock. Hello and welcome to episode 96 of GTA 6 o'clock, the world's most in-depth and best connected GTA 6 show. I am your host, James JJ Jarvis, and we are hurtling towards one of the key dates on the road to release of GTA 6. Yes, of course, I'm talking about episode 100 of GTA 6 o'clock, which is coming to you on December the 3rd. Joining me on that show is, well, I hope, the same person who is here today in the studio, and that is Dan DD Dawkins. Hello, Dan.
Hello, I do intend to join you, and I'm glad you were so excited that you punched a wall.
Yeah, that was good, wasn't it? I hope you all heard that. The studio's quite small, and I was flailing for the intro.
And James has got giant arms. He doesn't like to speak about them, but when he flaps them out, anyone could die. So, yeah.
So that was a fun thing to do at the beginning of this show. Welcome back, Dan. Last week we replaced you with Nathan. That went pretty well, I thought.
Oh, good. And I've obviously listened to it, and I'm going to say Nathan was excellent. I was on holiday last week, and I tuned out. I'm sorry.
Yes, on holiday, but not sick this time, just on holiday. Yeah, Nathan came and stepped in. Thank you to everyone in the comments for being nice and saying that you'd actually like to hear more of him in the future. So
Hey, that's lovely.
we will try our best to get him on. So as I said, there are some important dates coming up. Obviously, episode 100. But also this week, there is the Take-Two investor call on November the 6th, which is on Thursday. As you'll listen to this on a Wednesday, that is tomorrow. I'm sure we'll get onto that shortly. But first, sound the news horn, Dan. Excellent, because the GTA 6 website has been updated, but it's not actually hugely exciting, right? What's happened here? And this is the new format of the podcast.
I won't do that again. I promise.
So, yes, the website has updated, but what's happened? Two things happened, right? There was some expanded artwork which showed a slightly zoomed out version of Jason and Lucia, which is the same artwork we got with trailer 2. This actually isn't new, although some people, maybe us in the newsletter, reported it to be new, but it's actually been on Rockstar's YouTube channel for quite some time.
Yes, I thought it was new.
It's like sort of new, publicly new.
But yeah, you're right. It's not new. It's kind of like its public presentation has been made more visible.
There we are.
And I think as a result, a lot of people, including myself, who should have double checked, thought it was new. It isn't. But we can talk about what the difference that makes as we chat now.
Yeah, we haven't really talked about that piece of artwork in particular on the show anyway. And I think there are some key details in it that we can go over. So let's do that now. So the version that we got with trailer 2 was like a cropped in version of this super widescreen image. Jason and Lucia are in the middle. They've obviously come from a boat which has some bullet holes in it. The police are coming, and you can see some of the environment that they're standing in. There's a large monument on the left-hand side of this image. And in real life, this is the Flagler Memorial Monument, which is here on the map. Hopefully, Nathan will put this on screen. It's right next to the Venetian Islands. Now, the Flagler Memorial Island is in real life, this is an uninhabited artificial island of South Beach in the city of Miami Beach. It's 110 foot, 34 meters, for those of you who enjoy meters, a high obelisk, and it's a monument to Miami pioneer Henry M. Flagler, and was built in the center of the freshly constructed island in memory of Flagler, who died in 1913. So that gives you a good geographical location of where this image is taking place. The other thing I wanted to pick up on here, which is maybe slightly more interesting from us from a gameplay point of view, is the case that Lucia is holding. Now, in most of the other heisty action sequences that we've seen so far, Jason, Lucia, and some of their crew are trying to steal money or are carrying money around in big duffel bags, having stolen it from somewhere. But the case that she's holding here looks to me like something that would house something more delicate. So what do we think this could be, and why would Jason and Lucia be stealing it? Any initial thoughts up top? Or do you believe that it's actually just a case full of money?
Well, I think it's an interesting distinction. It's not like the duffel bags you see in the traditional heist scenario. It's like something they've just stuffed in. It looks like something that almost arrived like that or was picked up ready to be carried in that case. It looks very much like the kind of case you would see Tom Cruise dangling off his little finger as if he's hanging off the top of a hot air balloon or something. The sort of case that contains not just money, that contains, it could be a bomb or a component part for a bomb. It could be very expensive jewelry, just like you said, probably from a high-end auction or something. It could be a weapon or a part of a weapon. It could be, and this is very Mission Impossible, like a something bioweapon. That feels very not GTA to go into bioweapons, I will add. But, this is the Mission Impossible thing.
Yeah.
Or some kind of ancient artifact or something precious that means something to somebody that really means that they want to get it back. And you could sort of start to tie all this to, think about this artwork as, why have Rockstar chosen to make this the key art? And the key art usually is emblemic of all of the themes, characters, and scenarios of the game. It's the thing that says the most about your game, whilst not spoiling it. And it's Jason and Lucia, it's Miami, and it's them, being pursued by the police, holding this very particular case. Now, is this case the MacGuffin that starts everything spinning? And I'm spinning around a little bit between narratives here, but if you look at the GTA 6 website, it talks about the story beginning with I think something gone wrong, and then a criminal conspiracy that goes the length of Leonida. Is this case tied to that criminal conspiracy, or is it the trigger point for the thing that goes wrong that spins them into this dark world? Like something they pick up by accident that becomes, oh my God, we shouldn't have done that, and now we're really in trouble.
Yeah.
Or, or is it something later in the plot? I don't know. But it feels significant that it's not just a duffel bag or some it's not a dime store theft, is it?
No. It could be the kind of thing that they weren't explicitly aware of the value of the thing they were stealing or its significance towards something else. They just thought it was go out and do this, steal this thing. And they're like, I don't really know what it is, but I'll do that. And then it turns into something much bigger that they are then wrapped up in. Could very much be that. I think the presence of the police here suggests that it's something that's public facing, i.e. not drugs, because I don't feel like if you steal drugs from other criminals, they're ringing the police up to say, these other criminals have stolen my drugs. They'll go and deal with it themselves. And they've come on a boat, so it's probably somewhere on the coast that this has come from, or close to the coast where you could get on a boat and then drive it to this island and get off the boat. So if I had to guess, yes, I'd say maybe heist from a hotel on the Miami beachfront or similar, who is having some kind of pop-up auction or art exhibition. And what is in this case is some kind of prized item from one of those events. Now, there's loads of very nice hotels along the Miami beachfront. Could be any of them. Could be one of the Venetian islands that they've just nipped across from on a boat. But I think the location is key to trying to work out where they've come from here, and they're taking it back to this island. Now, I think this shot that they are in here is looking out from, in real life, what we would call Star Island, and it's looking back across at the Flagler Monument with the Venetian Way Bridge in the background, which I think then causes another problem for our stars here, and that is that this island doesn't really have a lot on it. There's nothing on it, really. There's a few houses and not a lot else. But there is one road which connects it to the MacArthur Causeway, which is then, I think, your big getaway road to go. You can go wherever then. You could go left or right. You go back to the beach. You could go back further into Miami. You could probably drive to a heliport or another big boat that's waiting. There's lots of options there, basically, for your getaway road. But there is only one road in and off that island. So I think this has been a planned thing where there's like, if we went from here to this island, we'd then be able to use this road to get to where we wanted. But it's, other than that, I think the mission structure is quite hard to work out.
Yeah, and as you were talking, I was just looking back at GTA 5 and just seeing like which artwork they released first and how emblematic it was of the overall game. And actually with 5, I think the first official artwork was that pest control artwork of what was then 2 characters coming out the back of a van, that Bugstars van. And it was, I guess, that was showing the game's about heists. But at that stage, they hadn't even settled in really on the trio of characters or hadn't revealed them. So perhaps it felt like that game was finding what it wanted to say. The first thing was like, just tell them it's in Los Santos.
Yeah.
And that's Michael, sort of, but he looks a bit different later on. They hadn't like locked in the same way this game has. So, yeah, I think what you say is really plausible. Of course, we don't know. Is it going to be actually from a mission that's going to happen? Like, maybe. There's precedent for that. So, yeah, I could buy into all of those things.
There's one other item of note, of course, from this website update, which was the supposed removal of the May 26th, 2026 date from the front page. But actually, this hasn't been removed from anywhere else on the site. It's still very much on the website, just not on the front page. The front page has just been redesigned to house a new sort of newsy carousel. So we don't think there's anything in this, right, that now the date just isn't there.
This has been one of the maddest weeks ever for GTA social media. I tried to touch on this in the newsletter last week a little bit, where I zoomed in on all the conspiracy nonsense that had come out of the new artwork. And I made the mistake of thinking new artwork, right? And then there's a whole load of theories, mad theories, about GTA Online artwork features a waxing gibbous moon, and that means November the 4th. And when you look at the island obelisk we just looked at, the arm of one of the characters makes a 4. So as I was saying, maddest week ever. People have been doing things such as getting the website image as it was and as it is now and going, look, the date's fallen off, suspicious. It's a false representation of reality. When you go on the GTA 6 product page, so from the main rockstargames.com website, if you've got the /VI6 page, the main page, you only have to scroll the page once to find, in giant full screen red letters, it says, coming May 26, 2026, with the platform links underneath. If they were trying to remove it from the website, they've done a terrible job because it's super, super visible.
Yeah.
And it just feels like they're still locked in.
Yeah. That date as well is still all over all of the other forms of media they've got, like, Twitter or X, YouTube. Like, it's in all of those banners and everything. So what's happened here is they've just updated the website to possibly house some things that are coming in the future, but putting the date on the very front page there just doesn't work anymore. But It does work on all the other pages that relate to GTA 6.
This is exactly the point. The website redesign, it's not just the GTA 6 page, it's the rockstargames.com website, and all the products and games within it are part of this shell redesign. The website, like I described it in the newsletter, looks a bit more widescreen, a bit more panoramic. Artwork looks better. The GTA 6 page looks a bit bigger. There's even an option to toggle the motion controls. The video player, as far as I can remember, looks enhanced. And there's a thing that people got excited about where there's a space on the carousel of the video player for Video 3 to sit. Sure, maybe there is that space. Doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to get filled, but it's not insignificant. They've changed the look of the website. And I think they've probably changed it in preparation for stuff. I don't know when, and I don't know what, but it makes sense that they've at some point gone, we've got to roll this out, press the button, don't make a noise about it. The website's then ready to go. It makes sense to do it, I think, before you drop the stuff, because if you drop new stuff on a new website and the website breaks, it's all happening all at once.
Yeah.
But if you launch the website first when there's nothing new, it's a bit less stressful than if you just drop, say, trailer 3 and then the website breaks and you go, oh my God, we should have just soft tested this first. So it makes sense that they do it in that order. Like you say, does this affect the date? No. Like, it's just the website design has changed. The focus has changed. Lots of people on social media have lost their minds in the last week looking for details. It is a minefield out there because there's all these things have got truthiness in them. There's like a degree of this thing is true, but I've distorted it to present the wrong narrative. So much of that. Like last night, I watched do you see that thing that did the rounds of 1 minute of leaked audio from the new trailer 3?
I did not see that.
And it's got I think it's got my mind set on you.
Yeah.
Which I think has been used before. I could believe that. It's got gunshots, of course. Someone who could be Lucia saying some words that he was shooting. It's a lie. Like, it uses a direct clip from one of the leaks. Mm-hmm. It's a lie.
Yeah.
But it passes the. Is it? I've got to think about it for a few seconds. Too much of that out there. That's why we're here. Like, we make mistakes occasionally, but we try not to.
Yeah.
Try and take a breath and get a measure of all this stuff.
There you go then. Myth busted. So back to the investor call that we mentioned at the top of the show then, Dan. What are we expecting from this, if anything?
Were I moving my chips onto the table...
And here they go.
It would be on the nothing to see here pile. Probably be business as usual. Yes, things are good. We're excited about GTA 6. Sales of our other games are great. Blah, blah, blah. More as it's due. That was very much the theme of their last investor call. The last investor call was like shockingly low on exciting new information. Yeah. I think that's where this is going to go.
Are you putting any of those chips on
you put your spread
on
bet.
The other?
I'm going to put 20 to 30%, 20% of my chips elsewhere, let's say, right? Oof. Which is probably too high.
Yeah,
but
you lost them.
Whatever. Like if they pay up, I've won big. Spread betting. I'm a risk taker in these imaginary chips that don't mean anything.
Yeah.
So there's an outside chance. There's some precedent for if there was news to share, and that news could be, what could the news be? To scenario role play, it could be, it's trailer 3. That's number 1. Number 2 is trailer 3 and pre-orders, or number 3, or it's just pre-orders, or I guess number 4, and we've got bad news about the release date. And whatever that news is, you might want to get it out before the investor call. But the news you'd want to get out before the investor call basically is bad news that affects money and the questions you get asked in share prices, which is exactly what they did around the May 26th, 2026 date, where they put that all out in the open before the investor call so that they could just address it head on and to say the bad news is out there, it's priced in, I'll answer questions about it. But, to announce a delay, let's say yesterday as you listen to this, they announced a delay 2 days before the investor call. That's a really tight window. And there'll still be a lot of hysteria around, and it wouldn't be a good environment, I don't think, for Strauss-Zelnick to take questions and for the team. I don't feel like that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And equally, what's the evidence for a trailer 3? The evidence is we're a bit bored and we'd like to see something new.
That will stand up in the kangaroo
That's
court.
what I mean. It's in itself, that means nothing, right? That's our problem. I talked about this on the newsletter. There is precedent for Tuesday being the day that trailers happen. Now, there are 52 trailer opportunities or 52 Tuesdays in a year, so why this one? Since GTA 6 launched, every GTA trailer thus far has been targeted for a Tuesday. Now, trailer 2 actually launched on a Monday.
Because of the moon.
Because of the moon. Well, no, because it got leaked, right? And so they had to release it on a Monday, but they'd said publicly this trailer will drop on Tuesday.
Yes.
So the 2 trailers so far, a sample set of 2, which is no sample set, every trailer's been targeted for a Tuesday. That's a piece of supporting evidence, should you want to believe it that way, right? But why not last Tuesday, next Tuesday, whatever? Makes more sense with the call itself. that's the positive spin. You could also look at the idea of pre-orders launching because, well, pre-orders, they're 6 months out, more like 7 months out, maybe soon. But it's all just based around the fact it's close to the investor call. But I don't think any of it's it's not really hard evidence, right? Am I missing something there?
No, I don't think so. And as you say, I think if anything was going to happen, it would have happened as you listen to this yesterday, as we record this today. And traditionally, based on their previous posting schedules, it would go out at about 2 p.m. on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Which would be right after we press the stop recording button on this show. So if you're listening to this now, as we suspect you are, nothing happened, and we're all just waiting for tomorrow, Thursday, for the investor call, for them to say, well, basically to say nothing, to say development is going well, we're pleased with progress, Rockstar themselves will update you soon. I imagine this is probably what the wording will be. I think, if you ask me, it's too early in the cycle for a delay announcement. If that is even on the table, which I don't think it is, but again, because of the Wild West of this week, there's been people coming out going, I've heard conflicting reports that it may or may not hit that date. And you're like,
nonsense. It's just nonsense.
That doesn't mean anything. So I think if you're going to get that, we will breeze past this investor call and we'll get it before the next one in March. A long time before the next one in March, probably a la GTA 5 sometime in January, if that was going to happen.
I mean, if there was a delay announcement, you mean?
Yeah.
Like they call it in Jan.
Yeah,
it's what they did with 5. They said the game was targeting a spring 2013 release. But they didn't put a date on it. They just said spring. And then in the end of January, they said, it's actually gone back to September.
Yeah. But here is the actual date.
Yeah.
That's the key.
And here's the key. And here's the date. We locked into the date. Now, they also said, it was interesting, they referred to it being a 4-month delay in conversation, which would imply that actually spring to them meant May, which is what we're targeting now. So, if there was a delay to September or whatever, maybe January, like you say, is the time they would do it. Maybe. Like I say with all this, maybe. This campaigns look different to the other ones.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and look,
don't know.
I'd also love, I think like you, a trailer 3, but I think at this point in time it's too early for that. GTA 5 obviously had trailer 1 come out, and then trailer 2, which is roughly where we are now if we're saying it's the second trailer in the campaign, which obviously is based on the GTA 5 campaign, which is completely different to this. But anyway, trailer 2 was their Michael, Trevor, Franklin trailer, which then at the same time had the individual trailers for Michael, Franklin, and Trevor. Those are the 1-minute snippets of each of them. The full trailer was longer. Now, this is where I think we are now in the cycle. We've seen the world of Leonida, but not really heard from any of the characters. We haven't heard them speak or say anything for a significant amount of time. We've just seen the world. And what the Michael, Franklin, Trevor trailers did was introduce you to those characters in a much more meaningful way and say, these are the ones that you're playing as. Now, I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think we're going to get a Jason and a Lucia trailer, because why would you do the same thing again? You might as well try something new, and it's 13 years later. But I think the next trailer we get will be a bit more character story focused, as well as some of the world and the side activities, and hopefully, as we said before, the northern bit of the map. The third trailer for GTA 5 was an almost 5-minute gameplay video that they released about 2 months before release. I don't think we're there. So we're either in a situation where trailer 3, we're basically one trailer ahead. I think trailer 3 for GTA 6 is going to be what the Michael, Franklin, Trevor trailers were for GTA 5 in a way. And then we'll get gameplay much later.
If we get a proper gameplay deep dive trailer, that's very close to release. I say very close, couple of months,
Yeah.
2 months, whatever. The next trailer on the roadmap would be, I guess, the equivalent of a Michael Franklin Trevor. But since we are being told there's only 2 main characters, that's a bit less exciting. Whether it's, like you say, I think exactly what you say, it's going to be more time with the characters, maybe more on the plot, maybe more with the world. The world revealed on the website hasn't all been seen in motion in the same way. And whether they could just colour that in or start to hint a bit more about what the game is like to play and what's changed, that feels like the next step to enriching the world.
Yeah.
We don't know. As I say, they could do really anything. But what I will say is it's too early to go gameplay deep dive, behold the in-game camera, see this, see that. I just don't think you're going to do that yet.
No. I mean, the only other option here that I've just thought of, so it's probably mad, is individual trailers like Michael Franklin Trevor, 1 to 1.5 minutes each, but for every character that is on the website currently, and dropped in a pretty rapid succession, or, dropped 1 a month up until launch. And we start with like Booby Ike, and then we get Carl Hampton, and then you get builds all the way up to Jason and Lucia at the end or something like that. I also don't think is going to happen, but that would be fun. I would like to see individual characters. That
would be fun. And to sort of to counteract my own idea if they wouldn't do Lucia and Jason trailers, they might if, as we've speculated on the show at times, what if the game is a little bit co-op-y, same events live through different eyes, but they might be giving too much away if the game is actually designed that way. But you could do 2 trailers that are the same trailer from different perspectives.
Yeah.
If that was actually core to the game, which we don't know it is. It's just a piece of speculation we've had, which may or may not be true. But that would be a cool way to introduce that concept, to go 1 trailer, 2 different eyeballs. Actually, this is like the game. Mic drop.
Okay, let's move on then to the Dan Houser interview. Now, he has appeared on the Lex Fridman podcast, number 484. Well done for getting to 484. We're only getting towards 100. But anyway, they were talking about, together, GTA, his time at Rockstar, and of course his new venture with Absurd Ventures. Now, we've seen a little bit more of Dan Houser recently, but this is quite a big interview for him, right?
Oh, it's huge. This is... Where do I start with this? This is the mother lode. For people who are nerding out on GTA's creation, lore, and history, this is one of the most significant interview drops with a creative Heartland member of the GTA team there's ever been. And I think everyone who's noodled about the GTA world, and like myself included, has probably always gone back to a handful of interviews from 6, 7, 10 years ago. Dan Houser did some big deep dives with the Guardian newspaper, learnt a lot about his creative process and a lot about the game. And a lot of us have been picking away at that for 10 years in terms of where his mind's at and what he said about the GTA games. We had a little glimpse of this in an IGN interview, one of the Comic Cons, but it was really, it was really disappointing, truthfully. It seemed to like run on, the wait ran on forever. He was only on stage for 10, 15 minutes. They barely touched the surface. Now, the Lex Fridman thing is the opposite of that. This is like the ultimate nerd out deep dive, covering subjects from Dan Houser's favourite movies, to his creative process for writing the games, to his favourite character, to forgotten DLC, to where he thinks the future of gaming is going. It's really around the houses. And like, this is very typical of Lex Fridman, who, if you're not aware of him, he's like all these people you hear of and go, I've never heard of Lex Fridman. He's been around for 11 years posting tech style, future of AI style talks. And around about 11 years ago, he started that idea. 7 years ago, he hazarded upon this format, which is now at 484 episodes, where he does mega deep dives with like visionaries, gurus, tech leaders. And over the years, he's spoken to Elon Musk, Donald Trump. He's spoken to the leader of Google. He's spoken to Zelensky. He's spoken to the biggest names influencing the world as it is today. So for Dan to be part of that, Dan Houser to be part of it, is in itself a huge commendation. And you can see why he'd want to do it. And Lex Fridman's thing is really, he researches the living bleep out of his subjects. And he really nerds out with them about there's this thing you're doing, and I read the Absurd Verse book you're writing. And I think that's why people engage with him, because he does give them this deep conversation. And some of these podcasts, some of his interviews are 4 hours long.
Yeah, this one, thankfully, is on the shorter end, but there's loads in here. So this interview is 2 hours, 45 minutes long. And as Dan says, if you do have time, it is an interesting listen. So go and check it out. It's very easy to find. It's on YouTube. There are a few key takeaways in here which we can talk about. Obviously, there's loads of stuff we're going to have to skim over or save for future weeks.
Yes.
We've got GTA Not Leaving America, why Agent didn't work, then the Agent Trevor DLC for GTA 5, and then what GTA games are really about. We're going to tackle just those 4 for now and see how we get on. So the first one is about GTA Not Leaving America.
You know, there's a reason why GTA kept coming back to Miami, New York, Los Angeles. I think they're all very good for exactly what you laid out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you could say move it to any of those and it would work. You know,
So yeah, there's a melting pot aspect to New York also, right?
Yeah, and melting pot aspect to LA. You know, there's
Yeah.
glitz, glamour, underbelly, immigrants. You know, enormous wealth in all of them. I think those are what I think are really fun for any, not even just for GTA, but for anything where you want a kind of slice of life, almost like a sort of psychotic version of a Dickens book. You know, this big slice of life. He did it with London. You know, this psychotic version of these, you know, big, all kinds of characters in a melting pot. Any of these global cities work well for that.
Do you know if that was ever consideration to go elsewhere to like a London?
We made a little thing in London 26 years ago, GTA London, for the top down for the PS1. That was pretty cute and fun as the first mission pack ever for PlayStation 1. I think for a full GTA game, we always decided it was, there was so much Americana inherent in the IP, it would be really hard to make it work in London or anywhere else. You know, you needed guns, you needed this larger-than-life characters. It just felt like the game was so much about America. You know, possibly from an outsider's perspective, but you know that was so much about what the thing was that it wouldn't really have worked in the same way elsewhere.
Now, all of that stuff is really interesting because, as we have talked about before, all the way back in the GTA 5 o'clock days of when we were speculating on where will GTA 6 go. People were making lists of like definitely London. I remember Tokyo, maybe other states in America. But it feels like, even though they've played with those kind of things a little bit, you know, we had a version of GTA London from the top down add-on, but they just don't think it really works. And once it's laid out like that, you can kind of see that GTA games are sort of embedded in America and all of that kind of thing. It might not work if they try and go somewhere else.
Yeah, Dan House has been quite consistent on this. I think if you go back to the Guardian interviews he did around about 2013, 2015 time, he talked then about America being the heartland of GTA for all of these reasons. That makes perfect sense. The slightly cynical commercial take would be, well, of course it's set in America because that's your biggest consumer market. And probably the most copies of GTA sold are in America. And also culturally, that's the, I guess, the, you know, whether it's still as true as it was, the cultural touch point that permeates the rest of the world. And so America makes sense to do that. Where if you set a game, let's say in London, it's true, you can't carry firearms around in London. It's a bit more parochial, it's a bit smaller. Tokyo, maybe even more so. Like once you go past, like you're in Akihabara and there's neon, but then it's like, actually, how much do I know about this culture? Does this mean much to me? It might start to feel not as rich and entangled, and it's not the same immigrant culture. And that's something that Hauser also talks about in the interview. Like the first thing that he touches on is about his favorite movies, and he talks about Godfather films, and he talks about the scene where they arrive in America, the Italian immigrants, and they get off the boat, and he says it resonates with him as an immigrant, and it sort of, that was the kernel of the fascination that led to him going, you know, America's the land of opportunity. It's this mixing pot. And he says himself, and he said this before, he is a British outsider looking in. So for those reasons, I can't see it moving beyond America. Certainly not in the near horizon.
No. So then when we eventually get onto GTA 7 o'clock, let's remember this and go, where are they going to go next? It's almost certainly somewhere in America. And is it going to go back to LA, or could it go back to New York, et cetera, et cetera? But I think we'd probably look at other big American cities before you even think about looking overseas. Another thing they talked about was the Agent Trevor DLC, which we've talked about extensively on the show. Dan is quoted in this interview as saying,
the internet knows we made a DLC, single-player DLC for GTA 5 that never came out, and we've also never really worked on another game, but I like the idea of it that was a GTA zombie game. That would have been funny. I think that could have been quite fun.
What was the GTA 5 DLC?
It was one when you played as Trevor, but he was a secret agent.
Oh.
It was cute. It never quite came together, and it was never finished. It was about half done when it got abandoned. But I think if that had come out, probably wouldn't have got to make Red Dead 2. So there's always compromises.
So there you go. Like, I mean, this is a good indicator of where they were in production. Like it got about half done. I don't know how far along half done is. Like, it didn't feel like all of the missions and things were in there. It was just like the concept was done. Maybe there's an outline of the story. Then it all needs developing. But what it would have meant is we wouldn't have got Red Dead Redemption 2 because the team would have been focused on this single player DLC. And I think, personally, on balance, I would rather have Red Dead 2 than single player DLC for GTA 5 at the point that it was coming out, because by that point, it's 5 years after release. It's like, just make Red Dead 2 then.
Yeah, there's Red Dead 2, there's a lot more about this in this chat. I think Red Dead 2 clearly had a dramatic impact on Rockstar, its work culture. It did a lot of things good and bad to the company. That's really clear. I guess it's always been rumoured as being clear, but Dan addresses it head on. What I like about this Agent Trevor confirmation is that it's the first time, I guess, someone who definitely knows has said, yes, it was real. We've heard that through internet rumour, and about a year ago, we heard Stephen Ogg sort of start to talk about it.
Yeah.
But then part of you goes, did Stephen Ogg, did he really know what it was? And it's not as cast iron as Dan Houser saying it. And, who knows what state it got to? Maybe those images will leak. It's fascinating probably to look back at when that first leaked, what else was said around it, because that was probably true as well. Like, somebody knew, somebody leaked this.
Yeah.
So that's, well done, that leaker, that person, whatever, right? Like, really good. But I'm excited about that idea. I still think that would be a brilliant thing, but you can't make everything. And Red Dead devoured that company. So, that was the compromise they had to make.
And if we're talking about cancelled projects, let's move on to Agent, which was covered briefly.
We worked a lot on multiple iterations of an open world spy game.
Yeah.
And it never came together.
It's the Agent.
Agent, and it had about 5 different iterations.
So good.
I don't think it works. I concluded, and I keep thinking about it sometimes. I sometimes lie in bed thinking about it. And I've concluded as what makes them really good as film stories makes them not work as video games, or need to think through how to do it in a different way as a video game.
So for people who don't know, it would be hypothetically set in 1970s Cold War era.
That was one of the versions. There was another one that was set in current. We had so many different versions of this game. We worked on so many different teams.
But it would be more geopolitical, like espionage.
And
assassinations.
Assassinations. I don't know what it would have been, because we never got it enough to even doing a proper story on it. We're doing the early work as you get the world up and running. It never really found its feet in either of the.
Interesting. And
I sort of think I know why. Because one of those films, they're very, very frenetic, and they beat to beat to beat. You've got to go here and save the world. You've got to go there and stop that person being killed and then save the world. And an open world game does have moments like that when the story comes together, but for large portions, it's a lot kind of looser, and you're just hanging out and you're just doing what you want. And I want freedom, and I want to go over here and do what I want, and I want to go over and do what you want. And that's why it works well being a criminal, because you fundamentally don't have anyone telling you what to do. And we try and create external agency through these people kind of forcing you into the story at times. But as a spy, that doesn't really work because you have to be against the clock.
Which I think IO Interactive, the developers of Hitman, might have something to say about. But that's not really a fully open world spy game. It's like a sandbox more than go anywhere, do what you want.
Yeah, and it's more like the scenario and the parameters you operate within are very set.
Yeah.
You are going to this mansion to kill this guy, and you want to infiltrate this kitchen or do this. The goal's very defined, but you've got open interpretive routes to get there. But it's not like GTA where you're completely free to do whatever you want. Go and buy a cheeseburger, look at the sun, blah, blah, blah. Oh, and by the way, you might get a mission saying you've got to kill this guy. And they're almost at odds, aren't they? We talked about this off air and just saying the life of a spy when they're not being a spy feels irreconcilable to what an open world game is a little bit. It'd just be really boring and weird to be like, there aren't many moments of James Bond. I mean, maybe because James Bond is boring and all he does is kill people and be a spy and then sit there drinking and being sad about all the stuff he's been through, which is hinted at. But like the outsides of his life, he's not a normal person. He's done and seen mad things. Like you can't explore that stuff.
No, you can't be a spy and undercover and then spend most of your time walking around eating burgers and in an open world game. What else do you do if you can't go around brandishing weapons and getting into trouble? You have to just live a normal, non-existent life. Non-existent in the way that you don't exist to the rest of the world. You're just trying to blend in. Like, what's the bit of that open world? Go and do a normal job and then come home and wait for your spy mission to begin.
There's actually an interesting route back to Lex Fridman here, because his most popular podcast show of all time, got 19 million views, is with a guy I'd never heard of. I looked at his bio, brackets, CIA spy. So maybe in that episode he talks about the banality versus the reality, right? But again, that's a real life spy versus the filmic spy, the one that's fun to play, the James Bond character. They just don't reconcile. And I think the only way this works is in a sort of Uncharted-y style game where you're essentially catapulted through it, maybe with some interpretive freedom to do mission A one way or another way, or like a bit like Hitman meets Uncharted.
Yeah.
Might work. And it clearly feels like they went through the ringer. 5 different scenarios. Like the 70s Cold War one, and I think I read this about talking about it's more like Smiley's People. It's more about subterfuge and who can you trust. That's hard to do in a game. That's more like a point and click game than it is an open world action-y game, I think. Now, what's interesting is I'd heard 6, 7, 8 years ago that Agent was actually much more like a James Bond film. And maybe this was one of the versions. And I've been told, and this is from someone who would absolutely know, that it was more like, I guess like James Bond set pieces, like Live and Let Die with the skiing becomes a parachute drop. Whether that was the vibe or an actual mission, I don't know. But that was how it's described to me a very long time ago. Maybe that got abandoned. That felt like it could work to me, like a chain of Rockstar does Uncharted set pieces. But I guess maybe they looked at it and went, we're just making Uncharted, aren't we? But with spies, can we do it better? Is this the right thing for us? No.
Yeah, I'd never really imagined Agent as a huge open world game in the way that it's maybe being described here. Like, I thought it would be a much more linear path. Like, maybe it's a bit of LA Noire, like perceived open world, but not actually a full open world. It's like you sort of have to go here to here. You can go around the block a few times if you want, but really you have to get
You're really
to this
going
point.
A to B, aren't you? It's like you can look around, but don't bother. There's not much there for you.
But it feels like that they didn't want to do that. They didn't want to do some kind of linear experience. And I guess, looking back through Rockstar's DNA, open world games are the things that they make. We go back to Manhunt as something that is probably not that and a lot more linear, and then the Warriors sort of the same. But even as you were saying earlier, Dan, like Midnight Club is essentially a big open city where you can drive around and do what you want. but it's, this feels like they were trying to like mash two genres together, which was never really going to work. You can't force what is essentially a single player story driven game experience into an open world environment, because like you say, especially a spy one, like Dan Houser says, you must do this within 30 minutes or the world's going to end. But you don't want to then restrict the players to go, but we don't want you to go all the way over there because it's an open world game. So why wouldn't you go over there? It's a difficult thing to balance there, I think, which is maybe why this didn't come together.
I was just looking back to see when was literally the last non-open world game they released. I was going to say, is it Ping Pong?
Does that count?
And that's an amazing game that if you haven't seen it, Rockstar actually released a ping pong game.
Xbox 360 was that at launch?
Yeah, that was like 2006. Then they've got Beta Rater, which you could not. It's more like a utility. That came out in 2009. But from that point on, it's been essentially open worlds all the way. If you include LA Noire as an open world, so like LA Noire, which is kind of an outside studio project, maybe. It's like 20 years, really, since they did anything that wasn't open world. And maybe they just said as a studio, this is our DNA, that's what we do. Agent isn't for us.
Yeah, and you can see those conversations going, we want to make this spy game. It's even, if one of the iterations was a bit linear and different, you could see those meetings in the high-up boardrooms of going, why isn't it open world, though? That's what we're really good at. And then I guess them going back and going like, well, let's try it as an open world and it just not working. And then you're like, well, okay, well, let's make something else instead.
Yeah, and I think there's always any creative project, when you've got something that fundamentally at core feels like it's at war with itself, you can drive yourself insane trying to make two things that will never work together meet. And I think that might be what they did. They essentially went, we're going to try and make these things that don't work together work.
Yeah.
2-3 years later, we've all gone mad and no, it doesn't.
There was one other bit I wanted to pick up on amongst all the other things that are in this interview, and it was like what the GTA games are really about. And Dan says when they're talking about why the previous GTA games have been so successful and why people are so excited about them, he says,
it's a Grand Theft Auto, it's going to be a game about being a criminal, but the way it's going to be a game is going to change quite a lot. So I think the way the IP kept evolving meant people being really excited to play it.
Now, I think that's a really interesting statement because for some reason, I didn't really look at GTA 6 as being explicitly about criminals. Like the people that you're playing are criminals, but that, is embedded clearly in the DNA of GTA games. Like one of the first things is, right, playing these characters are criminals. So I don't know really how that translates to GTA 6. Like, we know, obviously, we've seen Lucia in prison and leaving prison. She's obviously a criminal. And Jason in the trailer goes around hitting people with a big bat. Criminal activities going on there. But I guess I was coming at it from like, maybe one of these people got tangled up in something and didn't really explicitly want to be a criminal, but ended up doing some bad things because of certain situations, which I guess still makes them a criminal. But it's a different kind of story then, other than going, these two people are definitely criminals, but we need to make them likable, versus this one is a criminal and he's met this, or they have met this other person who's not a criminal, and then they turn them into one. Like those are, I think, different ways of looking at the story. But I always, I don't know. I felt GTA 6 might have been a different kind of background to the characters rather than these guys are just criminals and now you're going to do some missions with them.
I think it's a really good point because you almost forget, I certainly forget, that at the core, it's GTA Grand Theft Auto. It's about criminals stealing cars. That's the DNA of it. And within that, every lead character is essentially a criminal. But the sell isn't play as a criminal in the biggest open world yet. Like doing the crime is the reason you play this game. It almost feels weirdly incidental. And they've become more like they're about the worlds and they're about the characters and the scenarios and the way they entangle each other. They're more like sort of personal development stories than they are the thrill is just doing crime stuff. But it's interesting to be reminded of that, I think. And you look at GTA 6 and yeah, I just think that way up. I don't look at it as I can't wait to do a heist or I can't wait to drive the car. That's not interesting. The thing I was going to get at is Dan Houser. He talks a bit more about his process and he talks a lot about GTA 4 and, for example, how he, in his own life, he said he was in not a very good place when he wrote GTA 4.
Here's the world. We're doing one based on a version of New York, say GTA 4. And I was living in New York, had been living in New York for a few years. Wasn't sure if I was happy. Was going through a lot of personal dramas as usual. And that was why I was looking at some of GTA 4 again recently, and it's really dark. And I was like, oh, that's why. I was single and miserable, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to stay in America.
I think he'd broken up with someone or was single. He said his life, he basically said his life was a bit shit. And the game came out very bleak. And I think he looked back on that and said, actually, yeah, the game was really dark. And it became an immigrant story. And he talks a lot about how difficult that was to write and to get into Nico's voice. But when he found it, it transformed the way he wrote all of it. And then I guess I haven't listened to the whole Lex Fridman show, so maybe this is addressed. But then you look at, say, GTA 5, and you've got Michael, who could easily be a cipher for Dan Houser and where he was at that point in his life, having made loads of money through GTA 3 and 4, effectively being at the point where he could retire, being a man of a certain age, but life still goes on and you're still looking for that bit of excitement. And there's something Hideo Kojima does in his games. They're essentially all autobiographical. And that makes them more interesting. And I think that's the Dan Houser DNA through 4, 5 was that as well. So to see a Houserless 6, like whose story is this? Who in the script room does this resonate with? Or is it, we don't know. We just don't know what the story is and where it goes. But yeah, it's interesting to root it all back to the criminality because I just forget that's the thing.
All right. Well, if you've got anything to say about that podcast or this one, you can leave a message in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcast, why not leave a review? If you want to get in touch with us directly, you can. GTAV O'Clock on Twitter or X and GTAVIO'clock@gmail.com to send us any messages or, of course, any suggestions for guests to have on our 100th episode. That is coming up very soon. We've already got some really good members of the community who are going to come on, and we've got some big plans for episode 100, which we will reveal as the weeks go by and we get closer to that date. There is, of course, if you like reading words on a screen, a newsletter, which you can get by going to gamesradar.com/newsletter. That thing will come out every Thursday/Friday every week, and it will be a condensed version of some of the things we've talked about in this podcast, but also some other tidbits from around. And I guess this week, a hot burning take on the investor call.
I mean, this week's, I could probably write, I haven't got time to, we could probably write 3 newsletters this week. There's a lot to talk about the Lex Fridman thing, a lot to talk about. And then that's without the investor call. So I'll probably put the newsletter out on Friday this week like I have done recently. We'll look into the investor call. We might be looking back at trailer 3, the delay or the pre-order, and all whatever happens, we've got a packed newsletter. And, maybe a packed show. Maybe you'll hear 2 podcasts this week. Who knows?
Who knows? The only way to make sure you don't miss one is to hit the subscribe button on YouTube. So you do that, and we'll be back next week for another episode of GTO 6 o'clock.